Hello everyone, I'm Jeff477, and welcome to Movie Talk. On this new segment on my channel, I talk about movies. Because, let's face it, everybody has their opinion on movies, and I'm no different. And I could not think of a better subject to talk about than the Star Wars prequels. Look, it's no secret that many Star Wars fans hated the prequels when they first came out. I, fortunately, was not one of those fans. Hell, Revenge of the Sith was one of the films that inspired me to pursue a career in filmmaking. As time has marched on, and the inclusion of Star Wars The Clone Wars, many Star Wars fans are coming around to the prequels and realizing they aren't as bad as they had originally made them out to be. But still, that hasn't stopped some people from coming up with ways to make the prequels better. And I found 16 different suggestions from an article that I can't find anymore on how to do just that. Some of these suggestions I agree with, others, well, not so much. So, for this video, we'll look at each suggestion and offer my opinion on them. With all that said, let's start off with the first suggestion. Dooku should have been around from the beginning. Put Dooku on the Jedi Council in Episode 1 and make him the lone voice on the Council in support of Anakin's training. When Qui-Gon dies, Dooku storms out raving about the incompetence of the Council and of the Republic as a whole for electing a Chancellor that only he has the political acumen to sense is corrupt. One of the scenes in the movie shows Dooku being approached by a hooded figure. I don't agree with this suggestion, and that may be due to my love for the Darth Plagueis novel and how this book laid out Dooku's motives for leaving the Jedi Order and joining the Sith. In both Legends and in the current canon, Dooku is portrayed as a maverick within the Jedi Order of the prequel era, even more so than his apprentice Qui-Gon. Dooku is a firm believer that the Republic and the galaxy as a whole would be better off if the Jedi were in charge. With thinking like that, Dooku would not have been made a member of the Jedi Council. Also, if you read the chapters of the Plagueis novel that coincide with the events of Episode 1, Dooku makes it very clear to Palpatine, whom Dooku is buddies with, that he thinks the Jedi Council would be fools to let Anakin into the Order, and that Anakin should have been left on Tatooine with his mother. Now, I think Dooku could have been more approved in Episode 2. In Episode 2, when we hear about Dooku, we, the audience, are made to think of him as the bad guy. And Padme helps instigate this.
I think that Count Dooku was behind it.
That to me is a mistake. I think Padme should have suspected Nute Gunray of the bombing, not Dooku. And it wouldn't be that big of a stretch to think that way given their past history in Episode 1. Plus, this change would add more of an aura of mystery around Dooku as to who he is and what part he has to play in this story. I would even add the deleted scene in the Jedi Archives where Obi-Wan learns more about Dooku, which would add another layer of mystery as to whether or not Dooku is a friend or foe until we get to Geonosis. Suggestion number 2. Show the depth of Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship. Michael Whelan writes, add more scenes with Anakin and Obi-Wan in them together, just hanging out. First, this would establish Anakin and Obi-Wan's strong friendship. Second, it would give us a way to show us Anakin's conflict through a deteriorating friendship rather than tell us directly through dialogue. I can't disagree with this suggestion, as the Clone Wars series does have scenes like this, where it's just Anakin and Obi-Wan just hanging out. Of course, that show also does feature scenes of their relationship straining as the war progresses. Although, one user named of Lupatine did offer a good argument to this. Obi-Wan and Anakin aren't friends. It's a dysfunctional sibling relationship, where the older brother had to take the place of the father when he didn't want to, and it messed up their relationship. Anakin needed a stronger parental figure, but Obi-Wan stepped out of this role the moment he could go back to being buddies. Anakin needed what he became to Ahsoka. I don't think it's a mistake that he chose to parent her as he does, and Obi-Wan was too young and inexperienced to take on a Padawan, let alone the chosen one. This is a statement that I could get behind, and it falls in line with what Dave Filoni said in the Disney Gallery's Mandalorian documentary.
Obi-Wan trains Anakin at first out of a promise he makes to Qui-Gon, not because he cares about him. When they get Anakin, when they find him on Tatooine, he says, "Why do I feel like we've found another useless life form?" He's comparing Anakin to Jar Jar.
Excuse me.
And he's saying, this is a waste of our time. Why are we doing this? Why do you see importance in these creatures like Jar Jar Binks and this 10-year-old boy? This is useless. So he's a brother to Anakin eventually, but he's not a father figure.
Suggestion number 3. Give Jar Jar some depth. One Digital Noise writes, if you've been on the internet, chances are you come across the Darth Jar Jar fan theory on Reddit back in the mid-2010s. While certainly plausible if you follow George Lucas's philosophy on rhyming his trilogies, there were much simpler ways to give Jar Jar Binks some semblance of characterization that wouldn't have completely changed the course of the films. Anakin Skywalker, Annie, first meets Jar Jar in Episode 1 as a very young boy. Jar Jar calls him Annie. Even in Episode 2, he calls him Annie. In the same scene where he and Padme share their uncomfortable
My goodness, you've grown.
bit, I was convinced his character's existed for a reason besides selling toys. I told my friends, you'll see, Jar Jar is meant to serve as the audience's emotional link to the little boy Anakin. So, when he becomes Darth Vader, we'll still have good old Jar Jar calling him Annie. When Episode 2 came out and opened with Jar Jar saying Annie, I thought my suspicions were confirmed. He still called him Annie. Emotional link confirmed. I thought, wouldn't it be great if Anakin kills Jar Jar when he turns to the dark side? I was convinced this was going to happen. Then, it didn't. Episode 3 came and went without Anakin wasting the Jar Jar scene. All we needed was a quick scene after Anakin's turn, but before he kills all the younglings, showing Anakin running into Jar Jar, who calls him Annie, of course, even though Annie has that "I'll cut you" look on his face. Perhaps Jar Jar tries to find out what's wrong, perhaps he's just annoying. Either way, Annie gets pissed and kills him. Regardless, this one scene would have made his entire character have a point. A true plot-driven point. Jar Jar should have served as our emotional link to the little boy from Episode 1. Instead, he was just a sad joke. Jar Jar should have been the audience's emotional link to young Anakin. Vader should have killed Jar Jar late in Episode 3 to illustrate just how far he'd fallen.
Whoa.
1. Intel Agents writes, get rid of the accent and broken dialect so that the audience can take him seriously. I can't argue with that. Okay. I'll just say this right off the bat. I didn't have a problem with Jar Jar. I didn't really find him all that annoying. But I will agree that more could have been done with his character. And I think the best way to fix that would be to change the reason why he was banished to begin with. If you read the Dark Plagueis novel, which you should, by the way, you find out that the Naboo and the Gungans had been in conflict with each other for centuries, similar to the conflict between the Native Americans and the US. Let's play into that. Instead of being banished for being clumsy, have Jar Jar be banished because he helped out some Naboo people when they were in dire need. The Gungans would see this as an act of betrayal and punish him for it. Also, I would give Jar Jar a soldier background as well, just to help explain why Boss Nass would make him a general. Suggestion number 4. Give Padme more agency over her romantic interests. Have Padme pursue Anakin. Anakin is first established. He doesn't seem like a good man or a good Jedi. Instead, he comes across as a creepy, possessive punk. It's frankly rather difficult to see why a woman like Padme would be interested in him. If Padme is the pursuer, however, it does several things. First, it establishes Padme as a character with agency. Second, it would make us like Anakin more, since Padme's love for him would act as a social proof for the audience. Third, Anakin's resistance to this pursuit would establish his commitment to the Jedi Order, and his surrender to the love would show that he is corruptible. Most usefully, this change would play on some of the oldest tropes in world history, including Adam and Eve, Samson and Delilah, Lancelot, and Guinevere. Going against the tropes is sometimes good, but tropes are around for a reason. They work. I've got nothing to add. I wholeheartedly agree with this. Suggestion number 5. Ditch Naboo, show us Alderaan. One Sigma Echo writes, Padme is a beautiful young Alderaanian princess. Alderaan is a peace-loving, thriving core world, and an easy target for the Sith. As in The Phantom Menace, Obi-Wan defeats Maul, seemingly killing him. Alderaan replaces Naboo as a major location, with much of the action taking place there, giving much-needed weight to the planet's eventual destruction in the original trilogy. One William Frantz writes, introduce Padme Amidala as a princess, not a queen. She is at the Senate representing the royal family of Alderaan, forget Naboo, while Regional Governor Newt Gunray establishes the Blockade. Padme must return to Alderaan, but she can't do it alone. The Senate is useless, so she desperately turns to the crusty old Jedi Order that used to keep the peace in the Old Republic. Again, I got nothing. It's not necessarily that I agree with it. I could go either way. Suggestion number 6. Give a reason for the Trade Federation's blockade. Why did the Trade Federation blockade Naboo? The Trade Federation would attempt to blockade Naboo not over trade routes or tariffs, but over a rare natural resource that Naboo has. It could be used in the building of something important, such as hyperdrives. Nations don't go to war over trade routes. They go to war over land and resources, such as oil. Think America's meddling in the Middle East. We can even have the Trade Federation attempt to install a rival government or royal family to fight against Padme Amidala. It's a habit for more powerful nations to install public governments in less powerful nations. Okay, I'll admit that isn't a bad suggestion. But there is a reason for the Trade Federation's blockade for Naboo. That reason being to get Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, into the Chancellorship of the Republic. The Crisis on Naboo was just the first move in a complex plot to destroy the Jedi and take over the Republic. Suggestion number 7. The prequels should have started with Attack of the Clones. The prequels might have been well served to start with Attack of the Clones, and an already impetuous, aggressive, but heroic Anakin. Maybe have some exposition about his childhood as a slave and late induction into the Order, including his nightmares about his mother. Then we have a whole second film to see just what makes him so much more remarkable than other Jedi, and marinate on the darkness in Anakin and watch it grow through the film, juxtapose against his heroics in battle and the horrors of war, giving us room to dread what we know will happen in Episode 3. Well, given what the Clone Wars have done to both Anakin's character and the prequels as a whole, this ain't a bad suggestion. Suggestion number 8. Rework the entire Count Dooku and Jango Fett subplot. Don't make Jango an obvious bad guy. Give the audience credit for being able to grasp subtlety. By making him a villain who they find out works for Count Dooku makes the Jedi look like idiots for even trusting the cloned army. I'm sorry, but if Mace Windu has to cut someone's head off, I'm not going to be trusting an army of the same person's clones. We should have some reason to question if the clone army is a good thing, but it doesn't need to be hand-fisted. It should be obvious the Jedi made a mistake trusting in clones in Episode 3, not from the very beginning. True, but we must remember one thing, that Sidious and Dooku had planned this out. At the end of Attack of the Clones, we get this scene.
You have done well.
I have good news for you, my lord. The war has begun.
Excellent. Everything is going as planned.
This bit of dialogue tells me that Sidious wanted the Jedi to find Jango Fett, which would lead to the discovery of the clone army. Hell, I'll even go as far as to say that Sidious manipulated the events in Padme's assassination attempt. I mean, what better way for the Republic to go to war if one of its beloved senators gets killed? Hell, that's how World War I started. Plus, the clones are a blank slate that the Jedi can mold and shape through their interactions during the war, as we see in the Clone Wars series, which makes the scenes where they turn on the Jedi at Sidious' command all the more tragic. Suggestion 9. Why create General Grievous when Darth Maul is right there? I think the biggest change I'd make would be to make Darth Maul and General Grievous the same person. It makes more sense, plot-wise, for Obi-Wan to have to face his old demon again during the third film, rather than some unimportant card-carrying villain with no established emotional connection to any of the cast. I have no idea why they didn't do this. Darth Maul and General Grievous are practically the same person already. And the absence of the Force sensitivity could be explained in the same way it was for Vader. Loss of limbs, loss of midi-chlorians. I can't argue with this suggestion. Hell, imagine the conversation that Maul and Ahsoka had at the Siege of Mandalore, where Maul explains that Anakin has been groomed by Sidious to be his new apprentice, but with Obi-Wan in Ahsoka's role. Imagine the blow Obi-Wan would feel when he sees that security hologram of Anakin's attack and realizes that Maul was right. I guess this shows the untapped potential that Maul's character had at that time. Suggestion 10. Anakin needed to be older in The Phantom Menace. I had always lamented the fact that Anakin in Episode 1 wasn't 19 years old, mirroring Luke and later Rey, which I think would have solved a lot of the execution-related issues with his portrayal in the movie. It would have worked out some of the minor timeline weirdness. It's not lore-breaking for Anakin to have had kids and become Darth Vader at like 23, but it is weird, and would really have made him stand out as the black sheep and unprecedented case among the Jedi if he was an adult when he joined. Lucas was pretty adamant on a major theme of Anakin's story in the prequels, being the death or corruption of innocence. So we get adorable little kid, Annie, instead. I do agree that Anakin should have been older in Episode 1, but I want to make him 19. Instead, I would have him make him about the same age as Padme, at 14. I think that's the right age to keep in line with Lucas's idea of death or corruption of innocence. Suggestion 11. Give Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan some backup in The Phantom Menace. Have a team of Jedi Knights accompany Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Padme during their return to Naboo in the later part of The Phantom Menace. It was silly of the Jedi Council to allow them to return to Naboo without any assistance when they've been talking about the return of the Sith. Also, it would be cool to see more Jedi in action with more Force tricks. Not a bad suggestion, but let's remember that the Jedi had not battled the Sith for over 1,000 years. I think the Jedi Council was arrogant enough to believe that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan would be enough to deal with Maul, in the same way that Sidious believed that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were no match for Maul. Hell, I would even go as far as to say that they didn't believe that Maul was a Sith at all. Until Qui-Gon died, of course. Why do I say this? Because Mace Windu said this.
There's no doubt the mysterious warrior was a Sith.
Suggestion 12. A war between expendable soldiers is pointless. Get rid of the battle droids and the clone troopers. Making all the soldiers in these wars completely expendable is one of the surest ways to make the movie has no emotional heft whatsoever. Watching Obi-Wan or Anakin half-heartedly twirl around and kill 5 battle droids in the process is just about the dumbest bit of filmmaking I can think of. Every encounter with the battle droids is absolutely without stakes of any kind. If the Jedi have to murder real people instead, then you can inject a lot more emotion into things. The Jedi don't want to do that, but are forced to do so in their quest to stop the Sith. This could be one of those things that erode Jedi support, and the Separatists especially all seeing the Jedi as bad guys. If you're going to make the series political, then make the Jedi have to operate within that system. I can't agree with most of this. While I will agree that there would be a emotional way if the Jedi were fighting real people, and would add more weight to Sidious's case to wipe them out to his new empire, you can't say that there are no stakes when the Jedi are fighting the battle droids. For an example, let's look at the Battle of Geonosis and the arena fight. There were over 200 Jedi at the start of that battle, and their numbers got dwindled down to this. Now, even Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan ran for it when they came up against the Droidicus. Also, you can't get rid of the clones. There will be no Clone Wars without the clones. Suggestion 13. Cut the pod race. No pod racing, no pod racing, no pod racing. All that CG was a waste of the budget, and it's only fun to watch when you're a kid and it's the first time you've seen it. The pod race scene kills the watchability of the movie for adults, and especially after they extended the scene in subsequent releases. Anyway, It's a pointless set of scenes and doesn't add much to the story, if anything. Jeez, I wonder if he feels this way about all racing movies. Now, I personally had no problem with the pod race sequence. Can it be trimmed down? Yes. Can you get rid of it? No. Given the fact that this race does help set in motion Anakin's journey for the rest of the Star Wars series. Suggestion number 14. Leave Anakin's fate ambiguous to preserve the original trilogy. After Obi-Wan defeats Anakin, he is dangling off the mouth of a volcano. Obi-Wan has won, and could easily let Anakin die. But instead, he reaches out to save him. Just as he's about to, a huge ball of smoke and ash consume them. When it clears, Anakin is gone. Obi-Wan doesn't leave Anakin to die, and we never see Anakin get in the Vader suit, preserving as much of the plot of the original trilogy as possible. I think this person missed the main point of the prequel trilogy and episode 3 in general. That point being showing how Anakin gets put into the suit. Most people going in to see the prequels already knows the twist that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. Let's just imagine if Lucas decides to use this suggestion, and we don't see Anakin become Darth Vader. So many fans will get pissed off on the level that we saw for The Last Jedi. Suggestion 15. The Jedi and their Force ability should have been toned down. No more powers. Stop making the Jedi more and more powerful with each episode. Yes, they can move things using the Force, but it takes great effort and focus. It's physically exhausting. Luke breaks a sweat trying to move the X-Wing on Dagobah. Even after Yoda does it, he breathes and exhausts sigh. Vader has to pause and hold his lightsaber still before hurling heavy objects at Luke. The most casual use of telekinesis is Vader ripping the blaster from Han Solo's hand or flipping the switch at the carbonite freezer. Suddenly, in episode 1, Qui-Gon is knocking down battalions of droids with a flick of the wrist. In episode 2, Count Dooku is pulling down stone columns like marshmallows. Give me a break. Okay. This person is exaggerating. Qui-Gon doesn't knock down a battalion of droids. I think this person didn't watch Return of the Jedi, where we see Luke using telekinesis with the greatest of ease when compared to how he used it in The Empire Strikes Back. And when it comes to Darth Vader's use of telekinesis, let's remember that he was holding back during his fights with Luke because he wanted to convert his son to the dark side. And another thing, we do see that it took Dooku some time and effort when he's hurling stones and metal objects at Yoda. Hell, even Yoda is grunting and groaning when he's hurling those objects away from him. Thirdly, the prequels are set, as George Lucas described it, during the prime of the Jedi. So their powers would be stronger than what we saw in the original trilogy. And our 16th and final suggestion is Yoda shouldn't have made an appearance. One of the biggest reveals in the original trilogy was the identity of Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. Reddit user Seba Echo argues that he isn't needed. Preserve Yoda's reveal. Yoda never appears in the prequels, ever. He is referenced multiple times as the most powerful and wisest of the Jedi, but he is never seen. Mace Windu fills his role in the trilogy. Okay. This has got to be one of the stupidest suggestions that I've ever read. I'm not saying that to be mean. It's just a suggestion. This suggestion doesn't work. But let's look back at The Empire Strikes Back, shall we? Obi-Wan states that Yoda was the Jedi Master that instructed him. This means that somewhere within the Jedi Temple lives Yoda, who gives out instructions to Jedi learners. And before you go mentioning Qui-Gon, let's remember that in Episode 2, we see Yoda instructing younglings in how to deflect laser bolts with lightsabers. It isn't that big of a stretch that Obi-Wan had similar lessons with Yoda as his instructor. Also, Yoda states in Empire that he sat on a council to decide upon who was to be trained, which we see him do in Episode 1 with Anakin. In fact, Yoda is the one who gives Obi-Wan the go-ahead to train Anakin. Now, let's just say George Lucas went this route. Fans who watched Episode 1 would probably send him angry letters asking where the hell Yoda was, and also asking him to put him in Episode 2 and 3. And those were 16 suggestions on how to improve the prequels. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about these suggestions in general. Do you have the same opinions as I do? Or do you think the people who made these suggestions are onto something? Also, if you have a way to improve the prequels, also let me know in the comment section below. Who knows? I might make a video out of it. Until next time, I'm Jeff77, signing out.